What's up, FA Nation? It's time for another edition of 3-Point Play. I'm Jen Piacenti here. Today with me is John Impemba of Fantasy Alarm, our managing editor. What's up, John?
Not too much, Jen. Just waiting for my picks here with the Scott Fishbowl. Forever waiting as I had the number one pick. So it means I'm basically, bookending each round. So long ways to go. It seems like forever in between my picks here. So just waiting. This is what I'm doing right now.
How are you feeling about your team so far?
It was okay. I started off with Christian McCaffrey, which I'm okay with. I was a little bit worried because they do have the first round bye. Week 13 is their bye, which is the first round of the Scott Fishbowl playoffs. But I figure if I get that far, it'll be because McCaffrey got me there anyways. Exactly. And then tight ends and quarterbacks were flying off the board. So I went CMC round 1. Then I went Matt Ryan and Mark Andrews 2 and 3, and then rounds 4 and 5, I went Phillip Rivers and Darren Waller. So I got Andrews and Waller, Rivers and Ryan as my QBs, but Christian McCaffrey as my running back right now. And there's still a lot of position players on the board because a lot of people went a similar route. Scott Fishbowl, you can start up to like 5 tight ends and you get the tight end bonus and all these things. So there's just a lot of ways people are building their rosters, but it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the draft plays out.
Absolutely. Lots of smart people in this league. It's lots of fun to see everybody's teams, how they're assembling them. And hey, it's going to be a great season. I'm looking forward to it. Let's stick on that topic. As you guys know, this is 3-Point Play. John and I are going to debate 3 different subjects. We'll each give 3 points for our side of the discussion. And then hopefully you guys will talk to us about who you think is the winner of each debate. So I'm going to start out with a question that's kind of related to the Scott Fishbowl. John, is there a third-year wide receiver that you really like to see this year?
I think for me and someone that I've targeted a ton in my best ball drafts this year is Michael Gallup. I know he's your Cowboys receiver there. But for me, Gallup's the guy that I like more than I like Amari Cooper, not just because there's an ADP discrepancy there where Cooper's going around the 3rd round. You're getting Gallup, in 6 or 7. Point number 1, he's coming off a monster sophomore year. Usually year 3 is the breakout year we see for receivers. Well, he did it in year 2, 66 catches, 1,100 yards, 6 scores, and he did that in just 14 games. So, there's a potential that he could have had an even greater season had he played, 2 of the final games there. He averaged 9.8 yards per target. He's a big deep threat. Averaged 16.8 yards per catch. So, we're talking about a receiver that usually guys have their big year in year 3. If he had it in year 2, who knows what's to come in year 3. Only bigger and better things, in my opinion. Reason number 2 is Amari Cooper is still technically the number 1 receiver on that team. So he's still going to draw a lot of the top coverage from opponents, which is going to leave more favorable coverage there for Michael Gallup. And again, he is a deep threat. So if teams are doubling, Amari Cooper over the middle, it's going to leave a lot of one-on-one safety play there on Gallup down the middle. So I think there's some good upside potential there. I'm not really worried about CeeDee Lamb being drafted. I know he's a very talented receiver, but they had Randall Cobb last year, who finished the year with 55 catches and 830 yards, which I think would be a pretty respectable number for a rookie receiver. So, if CeeDee Lamb comes in and just does what Randall Cobb did, it's going to allow, greater growth still for Michael Gallup in year 3. And reason number 3 for me was the Cowboys' offense last year was an absolute truck. They finished 2nd in passing yards, 6th in scoring last year, and they led the league in total yards per game. We're not expecting much different here from the Dallas offense. If anything, they might even be better. Dak signed that big long-term contract. He was the number 2 fantasy quarterback last year. So I'm expecting a lot of big things out of that offense, and all of that should culminate into a big year 3 for Michael Gallup.
All right. Well, I like all those arguments. As you know, I'm a Cowboys fan. But I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley over in Atlanta. And point number 1 is the system. Much like you said, the Dallas Cowboys are an absolute truck. Well, the offense in Atlanta is actually pretty high-powered as well. In 2019, the Falcons led the entire league with 654 total targets, and 64.5% of those went to the wide receiver position. So that's 421 targets to go around amongst the wide receivers in Atlanta. In addition to that, Matt Ryan has supported 2 top 24 PPR wide receivers 4 different times in his career. And if you're wondering, hey, is it even possible that you can have 2 really top receivers on a team? Look no further than Mike Evans and Chris Godwin last year for Tampa Bay, right? So it is possible, and this is a team that could support that. Number 2 is his efficiency. His efficiency increased last year. He had 866 total receiving yards, and his yards per reception was 13.7. So he actually averaged 2 more fantasy points per game than he did in his rookie year, but he only saw 1 more target. He also tied for 14th in average points per game with 10.3, and his teammate Julio was 5th for 11.7. It's actually not that big of a discrepancy. So again, as you said, the ADP differential, just like with Cooper and Gallup. You know, he's loved by Dirk Petter, who thinks he's just got speed, quickness. He thinks he's only going to develop more chemistry with Matt Ryan. So I think this third year is looking really good for him on an efficiency level. And then finally, of course, this is the one we always talk about. It's opportunity. Look, Julio Jones is going to be drawing the coverage. The other side of the field is going to be for Calvin Ridley. And when they were without Austin Hooper and Mohamed Sanu, that was weeks 11, 13. Ridley averaged almost 11 targets and 100 receiving yards per game. Now, Ridley did get injured. He only played 13 games. So after that, we don't know what happened, but it was looking really good. He probably would have finished as a top 15 wide receiver if he'd have played the entire season. So even though Julio Jones is pulling coverage, I think that you're going to see 115 targets or more from Calvin Ridley this season. Also, he had 7 touchdowns, which is 1 more than Julio Jones, even though Julio Jones played 2 more games. So in standard leagues, even more value there potentially from Calvin Ridley. So that's a lot of the reasons why I like Calvin Ridley. I also love Michael Gallup. I wonder, do you think Michael Gallup can stop fumbling?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a receiver's fumbling is more fixable, I guess, than a running back who fumbles, right? Like running back has the ball, a lot of guys are ripping at them. I feel receiver fumbles are rare, even though he does have some trouble with that. So I can't imagine that's a trend that continues, but if he does continue to have fumbleitis, well, I guess that will be an issue for him.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you would take Gallup over Ridley?
Sorry, I got like a piece of cat hair or something in my eye here. Yeah, it's I think, I would. That's a tough question. So I've actually been targeting them both because you can get them both in drafts because they're going, in those middle rounds. You're not really worried about taking them too early and then getting sniped. You can sort of get them, a round or two apart from one another. So if I had the opportunity, I'd probably still go with Gallup because I think Gallup actually overtakes Amari Cooper this year as the number 1 receiver on that team. Julio is still Julio. I mean, yeah, if the foot issues pop up, it does pave the way for Ridley, but I don't know if Ridley's going to be able to fully overtake a fully healthy Julio Jones as it is. So I probably still would go Gallup because I think he's going to ultimately be the better receiver this season, but I love them both. I think they're both in for outstanding years.
I love them both too. I'm going to go Ridley though, still slightly. And obviously I love Michael Gallup because, hey, he's my boy, but Calvin Ridley, there's just less competition. There's just so many targets in that system. And Julio Jones, yeah, the fit issue he could step up because of that, but also he's just getting a little older. Will he continue to be that good? He also doesn't get into the end zone as much. So I just think Ridley is poised to be in a really good, position this year. I think Gallup is too. Who knows what can happen? I just think there's a little bit less competition. I don't think Russell Gage is going to give them as much of a run for their money as CeeDee Lamb would give Michael Gallup.
My one thing with the touchdowns with them, again, this has been a reason that I've been, I guess, pumping up Todd Gurley a little bit more. Is Todd Gurley was an amazing red zone running back last year for the Rams, and the Falcons actually ranked 25th in red zone offense last season. I think the fact that Gurley's going to be there now, that offense could improve running the football in the red zone. And maybe that takes away some of the touchdowns that those receivers were getting when they get into that red zone area. So that's only my one little drawback, I think, when it comes to some of the Falcons receivers in terms of touchdowns, which are hard to predict as it is. I felt the fact that they added a real red zone threat and Gurley, downgrades them slightly, but I can still see Ridley, like you said, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns overall. So I
mean, obviously we can't base a lot on last year because Devonta Freeman was not,
Smith,
peak Devonta Freeman, Brian Hill. So. Exactly. So let me ask you this real quickly: Gurley or Gordon?
I've been going Gurley. The fact that Phillip Lindsay exists and should be the starter anyways. We've gone over this before, but we're both big Phillip Lindsay fans. So the fact that Gordon is now there, it kills both their value, I think. So.
I'm with you. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move along to some MLB. So far, we're still on track to open the season
Yeah, we'll
July
see.
23rd. We'll see. Fingers crossed for me. I just want to know, what team do you think is really going to come out and make a run and surprise us and end up going potentially all the way in the shortened season?
Yeah, so I mean, this is actually, maybe not a huge surprise if you're taking a look at Vegas odds and the fact that they did win 101 games. So, this is the Minnesota Twins. They're 16-1 favorites to win the World Series this year. So 16-1 by definition is a decent little long shot. We're looking at the Yankees and the Astros as heavy favorites. Yankees like 4-1. Astros, I think, were like 16-3 or whatever, Vegas odds breaks it down to. So the fact that they're third in the American League in terms of odds of winning the World Series, I consider them maybe a little bit of a long shot. But I mean, they were a breakout team last year, and now we're talking short season. They carry some of that over into this year, get hot early. I mean, that's the type of run we're talking about these teams going on and being able to just, get hot and win the World Series. So I'm going Minnesota Twins there, and that was my point number one. Point number two was their offense last year was absolutely amazing. They finished second in team average, second in runs scored, first in home runs, and then they went ahead this offseason and added Josh Donaldson, who hit 37 home runs last year in a bounce-back year in Atlanta. He had 96 runs and 94 RBI. So you're adding that bat to a team that already had Miguel Sano that hit 37 home runs like 100 games last year. Nelson Cruz, Eddie Rosario. I mean, that whole lineup up and down were just smacking home runs. So there's a ton of power in that offense. So, again, maybe pitching's not ready to go right out of the gate here, and the bats just get hot. They have the offensive firepower up and down the lineup that can really do a lot of damage to teams. And reason number three is their rotation and their bullpen. I mean, they have a strong starting pitcher there in Jose Barrios to lead the staff. Their bullpen is pretty solid as well with Rogers as a closer. But they made a couple acquisitions, which I find to be interesting. They traded for Kenta Maeda in that three-team trade that had, Mookie Betts going to L.A. Maeda, we always saw in L.A. be a really strong pitcher, but he was limited by innings out there because the Dodgers would just, they didn't want him hitting anymore. So after 5 innings, he'd get taken out. Well, now there's a DH, and there's a universal DH anyways. But Maeda being able to maybe pitch a little bit longer in these games, I think that could be beneficial to his, fantasy value, but also better for the team if they can get him out there for a little bit deeper. He's also been a successful reliever and short inning reliever when the Dodgers needed him for that. So some versatility there. And they also added Rich Hill, who, again, is a guy that goes like low 3 ERAs, but he can only pitch in 20 games. Well, he's probably only going to make 10 starts. So if they can keep him healthy for half of the time he's normally healthy for, then you're going to get a really effective pitcher as it is there. So I liked what they did to their rotation. I like that they added Josh Donaldson to an already stacked lineup. And the fact that they were so good last year, coming in this year, in a short season, they can ride that wave. So I'm going the Minnesota Twins.
I've got Rich Hill pretty much everywhere late. I absolutely love that pick. And I love Twins pitchers based on the way the season's going to go down. Now, I have to say, though, this was not a very long shot. I see the Twins as kind of a favorite. So I picked one a little further. I'm going to go with a team that has 40-1 odds, the Chicago White Sox.
Good one.
Yeah. So this is why. I'll start with point number one. Youth. Okay. You can't underestimate the value of young blood. And Chicago has some of the best young talent. They've got Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, Juan Macada, Tim Anderson, all these guys, 5 category threats. They can run, they can bat for average, they have power. Then they also threw in Noah Mazzara, the trade with Texas. They have Michael Kopech. They have Dylan Cease, these young arms coming up. And I just think that sometimes, youth doesn't know any better. I feel the same way about the Toronto Blue Jays. There's something about that excitement and the youth that can really come out firing. Only 60 games, anything can happen. Point number two, their front office wants to win. They recognize they have this young talent. They even have Nick Madrigal in the wings, right? They have so much talent. So what they did was they went around, and this is before they knew it was a 60-game season. They solidified their team with veterans. They went and got Yasmani Grandal, probably the best defensive catcher in the league, the best pitch framer in the league. It's only going to help their pitching. It's only going to help their young pitchers get better. They signed him to 4 years and $73 million. That's commitment. Then they went and got Dallas Keuchel, 3 years for $55 million. So they got a veteran pitcher, a pitcher with a Cy Young, someone to kind of help guide the team at leadership. And then they got Jose Abreu for 3 more years for $50 million. So they did this excellent job of putting the veteran leadership in with the youth. And you can, look at the Houston Astros team to 2017 and talk about how they cheated and all that. But one of the things that also worked is that they had a good blend of veterans and youth. And so you have that adult, shepherding you with the kid out there playing as hard as he can. I love that combo. I think the front office wants to win, and in 60 games that can happen. Number 3, divisional matchups, it's cake. Okay, they've got 10 games versus Kansas City. They got 10 games versus Detroit, and they got 4 games versus the Pirates. The Cubs and the Cardinals, bland, boring. The Brewers, boring. Really, the only thing that's going to give them any competition is probably the Twins, maybe Cleveland, maybe the Reds a little bit. But really, I just think this is a very winnable division. So those are my 3 reasons why I think White Sox could be the team that surprises everyone. Could be this year's Washington Nationals, if you will.
I mean, I'm not going to argue too much with you there. I mean, I like the White Sox a lot. Again, another really close, contender there. And like you said, for 40-1, I mean, those are, again, 16-1 for 40-1 for the White Sox. Those are really good odds, like you said, if you want to go ahead and throw a bet down. So I'm not going to argue too much with you there. It's another great pick.
Yep, I think both of those teams are really, and it's they're in the same division, so makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, last question. It's the summer. We got to have some fun. What is the very best theme park?
So I went maybe probably off the map here a little bit because I don't think many kids would say this, but I think Epcot Disney in Florida is one of the best parks to go to, and you appreciate it maybe a little bit more as an adult, and I think maybe you'll appreciate this one, Jen, as well. So reason number 1 is the food. Epcot is all of the countries, so you can go to all of the countries and just go eat whatever cuisine you want. Go to Italy, get Italian. You can go to China or Japan, whichever one it is, and get Japanese steakhouse. Like, go all around the world. You get all of the great food there, which is again something that I certainly appreciate. Reason number 2. You can drink all around the world when you go to Epcot Disney, which is fantastic. You want to go and go to Germany, get some beer, go to Ireland, all around the world, get some sake, whatever you want. So you can certainly go ahead and eat all around the world. You can drink all around the world, which are 2 things that I certainly appreciate the most about Epcot Disney. Now, it doesn't have all of the rides that all the other theme parks have. This is certainly more of the traditional old world Epcot. But reason number 3 is actually have one of the better firework displays there. So again, if you're into the firework thing, at the end of the night at Epcot Disney, they have a great fireworks show. So you can go ahead, eat all the food, enjoy all the drinks, and then end the night with a nice nightcap of a good fireworks show.
Okay, I am laughing so much because, John, I picked Disneyland. So I guess neither of us are big rides people. We could have gone Six Flags. We could have gone Universal Studios.
Yeah, and I did go to Cedar Point when I was younger, which is like the roller coaster capital of the world. But no, I'm much more on the food and beverage at this stage of my life. So.
Yeah, well, okay. So I'm going to give you my reasons why I think Disneyland is a little superior to Disney World. But in the end, we can probably call this one a draw. I would say my number 1 reason why, nostalgia. So this park was completed in 1955, and it's the only one of the Disney parks that was completely under the supervision of Walt Disney himself. And when you go there, you feel it. There's little Mickey Mouses hidden everywhere. There's music, there's Small World. Again, they're all themed villages, lands, if you will, Adventureland, Main Town, all these wonderful things. And it just feels like nostalgia. It feels like an easier time, a simpler time. So that's one of the reasons I love Disneyland. Number 2, the size. You can actually see the whole park in the day. And if you do ride rides, you might even have time to ride them twice. So you don't have to worry about, I'm never going to finish this. It's so hard. How am I going to get? I need a 3-day pass, all of this. You can just spend 1 day. You can see the whole park. You can enjoy it. And you can just leave tired and happy. You don't have to feel like you're overwhelmed and didn't get to everything. Number 3, the weather. It's always beautiful here in Southern California. You don't have to deal with the heat and humidity. That's the one bad thing to me about Orlando Walt Disney, is that it's just hot and there's crowds of people and you get fussy. I get fussy. I guess what I should be doing is buying beer, because that would probably help me get less fussy. But you got to bring a lot of sunscreen and you got to be willing to deal with crowds. I also have on my list here the fireworks show at Disneyland because they have it over Sleeping Beauty's castle. And of course, Sleeping Beauty's castle, smaller than Cinderella's castle, which is in Disney World. I think the Disney World castle is almost twice as tall. But it's really just all scale. Yeah, it's all scale. So we're Disney fans, apparently. I didn't even know.
Yeah, so I went to Disney every year from the time I was like 5 to like 16. So I was my family was very big into Disney. We did the Disney cruise when I was like 13, which is one of my favorite vacations of all time. So yeah, I was big into Disney as a child. I've been able to go back just once since I was older, but certainly another trip that I have planned in the future.
You know, I've actually never been to Disney as a child. I think when I was 16, we went to Disney World with my younger brothers. But it was okay. It was more like, you know, corralling all my younger brothers. They were all like 3, 4, 5 at the time. Then I went to Disneyland as an adult. And I think maybe you're right that that's part of what's so charming about it. When you go as an adult, you just find it so sweet and precious and nostalgic. And that's how I felt about Disneyland. Okay, so we're not going to ride any scary rides like the Giant. We're not going to Knott's Berry Farm. We're gonna go to Disneyland or Disney World if we ever take a Fantasyland vacation.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, you guys, thanks for tuning in for another edition of 3 Point Play. We love Michael Gallup and we love Calvin Ridley. I hope you get both of them in your Scott Fishbowl leagues and your home leagues. We also want you to keep an eye on the White Sox and the Minnesota Twins. Maybe even put a little wager on those. They might pay you pretty well.
I agree there. Go get the White Sox.
All right, guys. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.